into the community of animal bots.
Okay.
So part of it is also exploring like the different partnerships and dynamics of, you know, just it takes a whole village to raise a child kind of
That is my
mentality.
theme.
Right?
Yes.
Hey.
I just graduated with my master's, and when I did a graduation dinner, that was the theme. It takes a village. And it was more so to thank everyone, even teachers from back in elementary school, those that saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And so those were the things that carried me into the next phase and development of my life to get me to this point.
Okay.
Yeah. So we want to go.
I want to talk about what you're doing right now for the community.
Okay, so of course I'm a part of the Positive Results Corporation, so I do a lot of facilitation work.
How is the Anna?
And that includes bully workshop, leadership, character development, self-esteem. I also give back to a school that's affiliated with LAUSD called McAllister Opportunity School. That is a pregnancy school that I used to attend 27 years ago when I first had my first child. And I was just driving down the street a couple of years ago, and I happened to see a van pass by that said McAllister, and I reached out to them, and so the health nurse scheduled me to come out to that site, which is in San Fernando. But I found out that there were 3 other sites, and so for the last 3 years I've been going around to all 4 sites every year talking about teen dating violence, talking about healthy and unhealthy relationships, talking about healthy self-esteem. I have 4 sons. I am a grandmother, and I also am a community mother. And so I just do a variety of things. Where duty calls, I come running.
Right.
Because healing is my focus point when it comes down to working with all people that have been traumatized due to violence. And I had to go through my healing process as well, because I am a survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, and molestation. And I lost my mother when I was 14 years old to domestic violence. My stepfather had murdered her. And so after being a teenager at 17 with 3 children, 19 and 9 years with their father, I made a decision one day that I had to get out or I was going to die like my mother. And so I packed up me and my boys and I ran. And he eventually ended up going to prison for killing someone else. And so that was my opportunity to emotionally, mentally, physically break away from him.
That was a miracle you did what you did.
It was. You know, he actually had me arrested. Because
after you ran away?
No, before. Okay. That was a wake-up call. Because he had attacked me twice within 1 week. He had already beat me up severely 6 months prior. But then when he came home, he was okay. And then he started, you know, behaving erratically, and I didn't know he was on drugs. And so when he attacked me that last time, I fought back. And because I scratched him, I was arrested. And when I came home, I knew it was time to go. And I went. And so now it's just also me reaching back to my sons. Because my sons grew up with me, and they grew up in that violence. At least my first 2 did. When I had my second 2, I was in abusive relationships, but not physically abusive. My first 2 sons were involved in the physical abuse. And so really just reaching back to them, helping them to understand as, you know, men, the difference between being a vulnerable and aggressive. Understanding that even though I've healed, that doesn't necessarily mean that they've healed. Offering the same resources that I would give the community to my own family, because I don't just, you know, talk that talk, I walk it.
Yeah.
And then trying to, you know, change the culture of violence has been generational in my family, because my mother is gone. My aunts were victims of domestic violence. My sisters were victims of domestic violence. One of my brothers was an offender. And so I'm trying to break that cycle because I have grandchildren. 4 grandsons and 1 granddaughter. And I do not want to go into another generation of us experiencing trauma or committing crime, inflicting trauma upon other people. And so I do this because this is my passion.
Can I give you a hug?
Yes. I think that before, everyone thought that that story was the gateway into everything that I did. And then I started feeling like it's so much more to that. So I don't talk about my story unless it's really relevant to the subject.
Yeah.
Because I've been bullied. So I talk about being bullied by my 5th grade teacher and having to stand alone when all the 26 other students wouldn't say anything. And the district or the school did not punish him. And then he went and told his colleagues, who also bullied me for several years until I culminated out. I talk about those moments where I thought life was over because I was 13 years old giving birth to my first child, and then giving birth again at 14. A year, not even a good 2 years afterwards. It's like a year and a half difference. Having 3 children by 17. And how I had dreams and aspirations to be a dancer, or to be a singer, or even a lawyer. And how I thought that college was not an option. But eventually I got a job through LAUSD in a child development division. I had a co-worker that encouraged me to go get child development classes. And just those steps to get child development units opened the door for me to get a certification, which then led to an associate's. I took off a couple years. I had another baby, my 4th son. After I got out of that abusive relationship, I got a bachelor's degree, and now just recently, less than a year ago, I got a master's degree. So 3 children by 17, beat down, father's not in my life, and my mother is deceased. And so I just really thank God that I could have ended up on drugs. I could have took my own life. I could have took the lives of my children. I've never had a child protective case against me. And my mother, the few years that she was able to be here for me, she only got a chance to see my first child. But she taught me survival skills. She was only 28 when she died. Because she had me when she was 14. So I just talk about different parts of my life, not even so much the violence, but the moments where I was strong from lifting myself up constantly and keep pushing and dreaming. And then again, that village, that supervisor, that friend, that co-worker, family member, someone that kept saying to me, Tanisha, you are more than you think, you're more than enough. And so those were the things that pushed me to keep going, because there were a rally of people and they weren't blood. They were just the community.
Yeah.
And so because the community saw my potential and pushed me into that, that's what I'm here to do, to see others' potential and push them into their greatness.
Wow. So powerful. So powerful.
Yeah.
No, I now see why Candy wanted me to talk to you. Wow. You are the story. You lived your story. Like, what better person to be qualified to do this amazing and tough work than the people who have gone through it and who can now connect with other young women.
Yes.
So can you tell me more about the challenges you're seeing nowadays? Is it very similar? Does it trigger you? Does it trigger you?
So it's interesting that you asked that question, because very recently my brother and I are very close. Well, I have multiple brothers and sisters, but one particular brother I'm very close to. And so he did a Facebook post, and it was very controversial. And so I decided to comment, to give my input, because the subject was about us not being so offended by everything that goes on in society, even violence. And so I thought that that was very disheartening. And so his friend and I were kind of going back and forth. And I kept expecting my brother to kind of jump in and defend me.
Oh.
And he didn't. What that triggered for me was that all of these years in my family feeling unprotected, none of the men really stepping up. Now, I had only one uncle that tried to protect me, but I never had brothers or even the males that I chose to give children to. No one gave us a sense of comfort or safety. And so it was in that moment that as I felt like myself as a teenage girl, and that really hurt me. Now, the great thing is because my brother and I have such a healthy relationship, I was able to talk to him and talk it through and share with him my feelings and how that hurt, and he apologized and promised to never do it again. But it just let me know that a lot of what's going on today, which is also the reason why I went back to bridge the gap between my experiences and my education. Okay. To be able to identify with what we are experiencing. Because a lot of times people want to tell us, don't look back. The past doesn't matter. It doesn't, it very much affects the present, even in your healing stages. Yes, yes. And young ladies, just like back then, still feel like they're not enough. Right. Young men still feel like the world is against them. They're always the culprits. They're still the stereotypical, you know, things that people say about all of us, whether it's racially, religiously, you know, culturally. Yeah. And so I just want to really be able to meet people where they are. Yeah. Because often we meet them and we're trying to pull them up to where we are. Yeah. And they're not ready for that yet. So I meet them where they are with the premise that wherever you're trying to get, we can get together. Got it. Now, my question is, why do you think domestic violence happens? Like, why do you think the men in our society today abuse women? What's their background? What's their childhood trauma? It has a lot to do with exactly that. The examples of unhealthy manhood that they've been shown over time. A lot of times you look back, their fathers were abusers or their uncles were abusers or some male in their life or in their community was abused, because a lot of times we teach our young men especially that manhood and being strong is aggression. You're not supposed to cry. Man up. You know, and then when you talk about discipline in the household, whether it's from the mother and the father or both or one or the other, how many times have we disciplined our children not in a healthy sense but in an abusive sense, and we called it love? And if that's what you get, then a lot of times too, we as victims, we go searching for what we think is love. So we find it socially acceptable to accept someone controlling us or hitting on us in the name of love. And then generational curses. How you constantly see it go from generation to generation. Like I said, my mother, my grandmother, my sisters, all of us, the majority of the women in my family are dead. We have been through so much. And so until we know the root and the history of our families, and we begin to, again, heal, and to recognize that things that we practice in the name of tradition are not necessarily healthy. I don't care how far back they go. Right. And we're courageous enough to break that cycle and recognize that wasn't the right way. Stop telling each other that whatever happens here stays in this house. We built a culture of silence. We don't talk about it. And so because we don't talk about it, then no one's ever stepped in and helped. And then because we have a broken system that doesn't protect us like they're supposed to, or because they don't handle situations the right way, then we become not only victimized in our own situation, we become victimized by the system. So you figure if the system is not going to do right by me, then I'll have better chance of staying over here and dealing with my situation, because this is the norm for me. I know what this looks like. I know what this feels like. I know how to survive in this. And then one of the last things, if you are used to functioning in chaos, a lot of times you don't know how to respond to peace. You hit so many truth points. Amazing. Like, that's just so powerful. I mean, I'm hearing
hearing that first, you have to acknowledge what it is, what the broken system is in order to move forward.
Yeah.
And the second thing I heard was that it's a generational thing.
Yes,
And
learned behaviors.
Right. And the silence is what also condones and perpetuates the broken system.
Yes.
And then lastly, I heard that, moving forward, there needs to be more engagement, more community around this topic instead of making it like, oh, I can handle it. And then the last part I heard is that some women are so used to it, they've been so conditioned that when it comes peace and when it comes real love, they don't know how to handle it.
No. Because you're used to functioning in abuse and chaos. And so silence, if you're a person that's used to noise, and then you get in a space of solitude and silence, that is scary. And that's how we become distracted by social media. We become distracted by so many different things, TV, whatever it is, to take us away from those thoughts that you've never had an opportunity to visit. Because the truth hurts. It's painful. And we've already been through enough pain. Why would I want to revisit it trying to heal? But what they don't realize is what's on the other side.
What is on the other side?
Healing, peace, joy, safety, the opportunity to really live. We have it backwards. We're dying to live. That's what we're doing. And recognizing dying to live. Well, guess what? When you die, you're gone. And so it's just really important that we start looking at things on a deeper level. All these surface type stuff, it's not helping. It's causing us to be in the same cycle. And this is what keeps organizations like us thriving, because they're constant victims.
So in a way, it's ironic.
Yeah.
Because at the same time, you're never short on customers, so to speak, or clients or students.
Right.
But at the same time,
Do it.
We thought we could arrest our way out of this. Just arrest them. But we don't give any rehabilitation. We don't pay attention to why this person is actually doing what they're doing. And get them help. You take a woman or a child or even a male that's a victim, and you rehabilitate them. But the predator over here doesn't get help. What are they doing? It's like an STD.
yeah.
You're going and reinfecting other people, and then we get them, and then we nurse them to help, and then they're going to infect somebody else, and we're nursing, and it's just a constant cycle.
Right. It's an uphill battle.
Yeah.
Because for every one person you help out, there's like 5 more that is created.
Not to mention the children.
Yeah.
Because we're busy helping the adults, and we don't have a lot of resources for the children. So the assumption is if the parent heals, the child heals. No. So while the parent is now healed and thriving, you got another problem coming up right behind it.
Wow.
And you're talking about sometimes anywhere from 1 to 5 children to one parent. So that's 1 to 5 individuals whose lives has been affected, and that may either become victims and or the aggressor.
Right.